All right, Mr. Rick Bohe, you can start us off.
Thank you, Rabbi, for this teaching, and I appreciate the referring to that breastplate of righteousness back to the priestly garment. So I looked it up and went back to Exodus 28, and it's pretty lengthy. Well, the first thing, it said in 28:15, breastplate of right ruling in our version, a work of a skilled workman. And I want to thank you for being that skilled workman.
Amen.
Aaron wore it, but it took somebody skilled to craft it. I appreciate you.
Amen. Amen. Look, I didn't spend a lot of time doing the comparisons to the priestly garment. I know I did say that people normally think of the Roman soldier, but I wanted to go in a different direction. But when you compare it to the priestly garment, also, what's on the breastplate? The stones of the 12 tribes, right? So that he would always be aware of who he was representing in both directions, representing Yahweh, but also representing Israel, okay, and what his responsibilities were. And so that's kind of also goes along with the breastplate, is to remember who you are and in the context of the nation as well as in the context of the Creator, okay? All right, Olivier.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
When you were talking about salvation, something came to my mind. I guess a way to look at it that works for me, I don't know, I'd like to run it by you. Salvation, so you said he saved us. What came to my mind is he saved us from automatic deaths. Would it be something that'd be correct?
I would word it a little differently. He saved us from the default setting of if you live this life and you're just doing whatever you're doing, which would include sin, death would be the end result. So call it automatic is what you did. I mean, it's just a default ending, okay? So had he not done what he did, that would be life and then death.
He gave us an option, basically.
It created an option to go beyond that.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Because remember, in Ephesians 2, it said you were dead in your trespasses and you were without Elohim and you were without promise, you were without Messiah, without any of that stuff. So you had nothing to look forward to. You had no hope. The end of life would have been just been death, and that would have been it. All right, Michael?
So I suppose this isn't really much of a question, but you hit on something today right in the beginning of the teaching that you talked a little bit about last night. Actually, I feel maybe it was more so last night than today, but I mean, the children obey your parents still kind of gets there, because last night you were talking about children have no respect for their parents, citizens don't have any respect for police officers and authority, workers don't have any respect for their employees or employers and managers and stuff like that. And so after Torah study, this kind of hit me a little bit, and I was talking with Ashley about it. She's like, oh, wow, you should bring that up. I'm like, I don't know if I'll get the chance. We'll see. And so, but what I said was that because we have this kind of respect issue in our house, like the kids don't always respect us very much. And I can come up with examples, but I don't think I need to. But the children are frequently disrespectful towards me because I'm around all the time. Like if I was out there working and building and becoming more and conquering and providing and doing what a man is supposed to be doing more so than I already am, that I wouldn't be home every day, or at least not when I'm readily accessible to them every moment of the day. And then it would be kind of like a treat when I'm around. They would have a little more respect for me, especially if they can see the difference in their lives with that happening. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, that's certainly something that could be a part of it. Look, the thing that mostly affects the children is the inconsistency or the consistency of the way you handle things, okay? Certainly if you're not home and you're out working, and mom is a good part of this, if mom is creating the image of, well, you just wait till dad gets home and, do you want me to tell your dad what's going on? And then if dad does come home and bring the hammer properly like he's supposed to and bring that authority that mom is hoping for to back her up and everything else, then yes, dad coming home could have a different effect than you being home all the time. However, being home as often as you are, it's also about the consistency, because you could be out, come back. I know a lot of dads that are out and they come back and they just decide, since I'm finally home, I'm just gonna be the fun dad. I don't want to deal with anything. I'm not gonna bring any discipline. So this doesn't work that way. So it could work that way, But I watch it often not because the dad's like, I just had a hard day at work. I don't want to deal with disciplining you guys and dealing with that nonsense. Mom, you deal with it. And they just come home and just want to, kick back or whatever. And they're not getting any more respect from the children because they're not bringing anything in terms of authority and discipline in there.
And so one of them, I'm not going to say which one, but I told them to do something. And I said, I'm going to come back and check on you and see if it was done. And if it's not done, I'm going to take away all your toys and your books and everything. And they didn't do it. And so I took it away. And then last night when they got home, this one was like, hey, Mom, where's my stuff? And then Ashley sent me a text message. So I replied to her with what I'd done. And this child's like, oh my gosh, Dad was serious?
Yep. Hey, look, let me give you, I'm going to give you a story. This is not any disrespect to my wife, okay? Because a lot of mothers have this problem. But, my children, and you can ask them, you can ask my daughters, I'll tell you, they knew, because I always was consistent, that if I said something, I meant it, so they would not push. Anybody have children that push on you? You take something away, and then every 5 minutes, they're like, I want it back, I want it back, I want it back. See, my children learned very quickly never to do that with me, because the first time they did, I said, if you do that, I'm going to take more away from you or take it longer or whatever. And so they tried, and I made it longer. I said, do you want to do it again? We'll make it longer. I said, don't play this game with me. I'm not, if I say A, it's A until it's done. Don't ask me to change it. And so they learned. And then after that, you know what? They never questioned that I meant what I said. Why? Because I meant what I said. See, moms, your hearts are a little bit easier to tug on your heartstrings with your children. You carried them, you gave birth to them. There's a whole different relationship than with the dads. And so you often will do what you think is being nice, but you're undermining everything because you give in. Okay, and then the children learn, I can push on you and you'll give in. And that's the difference, is the consistency. Because my children would bother her and they would not bother me. They tried it once, the very first time, learned the lesson, and never did it again. Because as soon as they would almost go, I said, remember, I mean what I say. And they were like, I'm sorry, never mind. And that was it, okay? So the whole thing is mean what you say. Look, it's very interesting. I was working with a client years ago before ministry, and I didn't have children at that point, and this was a lady that was a little bit older. She was a grandmother and everything else, and she had already raised her children. And she said, because she knew, I think my wife was pregnant at the time, she said, do you want me to give you some advice from all my years? I said, sure, let me have advice. She said, never say anything more than once. When you say it, mean it. Don't say it if you don't mean it, but mean it, and then don't have to say it again. Back it up. Don't equivocate. Don't change your mind. Say things. Teach your children that you're only going to say it once, okay? But if you're going to say things out of anger and then calm down and regret it, now you see you made the mistake. Because now you feel bad that you overreacted, and now you're too hard on the child, and now you feel bad. But now all you're doing is training them that you don't mean what you say. Okay? And so my children knew, and I didn't take things from them very often, but they knew if I said something, it was going to be exactly what I said for as long as I said, that's it. No change was coming, okay? So you have to mean what you say and just make that clear. And when they came to me, I didn't get angry when they asked me that first time. I just said, if you're going to play this game, there's no game here. I'm only going to make it worse and longer because I mean what I say. And they saw that I did that. And then when the next time they tried a little bit, I said, do you want to play that game? They said, no, we don't want to play that game because I made it longer last time. And so they stopped doing it. I didn't say they stopped doing things to get in trouble, but they were mostly good kids. But I'm saying, but they knew that they weren't going to ask me to change my mind. So Michael, that's really, the biggest thing is that, make clear that you're not changing your mind. See, they were surprised that you meant what you said. Be consistent and they'll learn that you mean what you say. All right? And then you need to be on the same page with mom, so mom knows if you did it, that she can't undermine what you did. Okay? Because there has to be a echad when it comes to the disciplining. You got to be on the same page. So if mom said something, the child came to me, I said, don't you come to me. Who put you in trouble? Mom. I said, don't you come to me. If mom said, that's it, that's it. Okay? Don't ask me to undo what mom said. And I told my wife, I said, don't you ever undo what I say. Okay? I don't want those kids to think they can go to you to undermine me. And you don't want them bothering you like crazy every time I do something. If I do something, you send them right back to me, and that'll end it because they won't come back to me. Because I've already trained them right, at least about that part, right? Okay? So good point, all right? See, that's why we can trust everything from our Heavenly Father because he means what he says. And he's not changing his mind, okay? He's the same. You know, it says about Messiah, right? Same yesterday, today, and forever. He says, Yahweh says, I'm Yahweh, I change not. Don't ask me to change. Well, he got kind of a little snappy at Moses, and Moses was asking maybe, hey, maybe you can let me go into the land. He says, oh, don't you ask me that ever again. Don't ask me to change my mind. That's a good father right there. You know? And Moses said, and he said, he got a little angry with me for your sake, he said to the people, because it was for your sake that he didn't change, because if he had changed, it would have messed all of you up. Right? And so, you know, I'm not saying to be hard with your children, but when you do whatever you do, think it through, mean what you say, make sure that it's fair and balanced. You know, some of you will take something away for a month when really it should have been a day or two, okay? Because you're just angry, all right? So you got to make sure that the punishment makes sense, but then keep it, all right? All right, Shannon.
Okay, if you guys hear a thump, that's just my heart. It's okay. Maybe bless it, it'll feel better. Yeah, this is really just a comment about how you imagine how the devil works. You know, he doesn't force us to do anything. He just works what's already there. You know, instead of that phrase, the devil made me do it, instead we should say, damn it, the devil found something to work with.
Well, that might...
Add a little dramatic flair to it, or add the Gollum voice. Devil found something to work with. You know, just, I mean, that's not good, but you know, it's a way to be like, okay, now I'm aware, now I can fix it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Well said. I like the point you was trying to make, which is something I did say, but I like that someone else is, you know, reaffirming it, which is when something comes up, you should be aware that it's exposing something that you already had. It's not something from outside that was brought in, okay? And so that's where you could count a joy in a trial, because a trial often will be something exposed in you that needs to get dealt with, and then you have now the opportunity to deal with it, all right? But he, the enemy, Hasatan, the devil, all right, is simply looking for whatever it is in you that's weak so that he can attack it, which Abba uses as a way to expose it as opposed to that he wants it attacked. So the devil's going to attack something, which then brings something out into the light that you can deal with, all right? Okay. All right, so, Amy.
So talking about game shows, like being a contestant, aren't you glad it's not the Gong Show?
I liked the Gong Show.
I know, I just watched the documentary about that. So yeah, I don't know what you were talking about.
Gene, the dancing machine.
Yeah. And the unknown comic.
Some of you guys don't remember that.
Yeah, I remember the unknown comic too, so.
That's right, Chucky.
Carol Burnett had to go on there as Eunice.
All right.
So you were in chapter 6 and verse 18 talking about something, but when Yeshua was being tempted.
So if we're going to do the Gong Show, can I have a gong and can I be like Chuck Barris?
Yeah, that would be awesome, yeah. Just don't take it personal when we get gonged. So Yeshua was being tempted. You could have all this, which is going to not even be here. So in a worldly sense, are we more interested in materialism or the forever? And so here lately, it's like, I don't really want any of my stuff, like the jerks, because like, well, my stuff, you know, like,
right.
I just want the basic, what we need to survive. You know what I mean? I don't want to surround myself. Like, if this doesn't bring me joy, it's gone. I don't want it anymore. So like, I want to do minimalism. Does that make sense?
Look, I think minimalism can work for some people. I think that we certainly are welcome to avail ourselves of nicer other things if you want to, knowing that it's just for now and that it's not going to be here in the forever and that it's all going to burn away at some point. But I don't have a problem if somebody wants to take advantage of, if they can afford to, some things that make life a little bit easier. But also minimalism has its advantages as well. You have
I'm talking
attached to, less to be worried about, less to,
Like it seems like we pick extremes.
Yeah.
you know. So
We
it's
do.
like got to be one or the other and not just something.
But remember, the problem with the young man that had a lot of stuff wasn't that he had a lot of stuff, is that he prioritized it and loved the stuff over other things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like the stereotypical guy who spends more time taking care of his car than his wife. You know what I'm saying? Okay, that's a person whose priorities are on, materialism over more real things. Okay, you spend more time working on your car than spending with your kids. You spend more time on, your fishing stuff or whatever your hobby is or whatever your thing is that you like to do, or toys and things that you accumulate, as opposed to prioritizing the things that are correctly to be prioritized. So having some of those things in addition, if you have your things in balance, is fine, all right? Because Yeshua was wealthy, Abraham was wealthy, almost everybody important in Scripture was wealthy, okay? But they weren't in love with their wealth.
They used it for good. So then that brings me to this second part, what you were talking about, helping each other.
Mm-hmm.
So like the world says to compete against each other, and it says you have to compete to succeed, and there's survival of the fittest. So that means if I kill you, then it's okay because you were lesser than me because I survived. But Yahweh says that we have to cooperate. Cooperation brings unity. And it's like, Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? It's like, no, my dad was like, you should be asking, what have I done for you? What can I do for you? So if everybody was going around, what can I do for you? It would be just all the time. What can I do for you
Awesome.
and do you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So does that kind of play in with the materialism thing and the
It can.
kind of?
It can a little bit. Look,
Okay.
again, materialism is having an out of balance love of things.
Well, I think you're trying, the internal, I think you're trying to
Yeah.
satisfy that with the external.
Well, a lot of times people who are materialistic are using it to compensate for insecurities or for the way their life was in a certain way. So they're swinging, like you said, often the pendulum a little bit far to one side, okay? Because you can do a lot of really good things if you have some abundance, or you can very selfishly do nothing of any use with it.
And then I have just one more thing. 6 and then 8 and 9, you were talking about something, and it says, you got to be kind to everybody because you never know when you're entertaining messengers.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And then, unless you're Flip Wilson, you can't say the devil made me do it.
No. And you'd have to be Geraldine or whatever. Okay. All right. Man, you guys are making me go back to the 60s and 70s. Megan. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Rabbi Tom.
Thank you, Rabbi. In Ephesians 6, it talks about girding up the waist. And I got to thinking, some of the Orthodox men wear what's called a girdle. It's a black material belt that they tie around the waist, and wear it down. Mm-hmm. And in case anyone don't know what it is. And their idea is to separate the spiritual from the physical. So I'm not advocating we wear a girdle, but could we also view Ephesians 6 in that viewpoint that it's necessary to make a division between the physical and the spiritual and not allow them to interfere or clash with one another?
I guess. I mean, look, I think it's more like the metaphor we have of, I'm going to tighten my belt. The idea of which is usually means I'm going to get serious about something. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm going to tighten that belt and just, and I think that's what it's kind of saying. I'm girding my loins, I'm tightening my belt, I'm wrapping, being serious about truth. Okay. All right.
Sounds good.
So if I say I'm tightening my financial belt, I mean I'm going to be serious about it. There's no belt for finances. I'm just going to, it's a metaphor for being serious, I think, more than anything else.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. All right, Megan.
Hi, Rabbi.
Hi.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, I have a question, and I have 500 other things that I'm not going to ask you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so Ephesians 6:4, and you, fathers, do not provoke your children, but bring them up in the instruction and admonition of the master. How can single moms use this? Because we are both mom and dad.
Well, the point is, again, it's roles of authority. So parent, okay? Parent, try not to do this as, it's the vertical, parent, child, master, servant, right? Husband, wife. It's just the roles, okay? So it can be used for parent, not just fathers, okay?
So authority figure.
Almost, remember, I've told you guys this often, but not lately maybe. None of this, okay, I shouldn't say that. 99% of this was not written to you, women. It was written to the men, then to be shared with you. So it's written knowing that the primary audience reading it is the men. So it's addressing things from the top down, okay? That doesn't mean that it's against women or that women are not of any value. It's just I'm saying is that knowing the cultures when this was written and everything else, it was written to men who then shared it with their wives, etc. Okay? And so that's part of it. And the other part of it is that in the vertical structure, husband's gonna be before wife or father before mother. Now, if you're the only one there is mother, then it's talking to you. You are the authority over the child. That's what it's really talking about is the authority over. Child, parent. Okay?
Makes sense.
All right.
I guess I will share one thing. So I had a thought for a minute that I was not concentrating on the right things and not staying focused on Torah, but doing the Myers-Briggs personality test. Of course, I'm going to bring that up. And figuring out that I'm an ENTJ, and also the color code, figuring out I'm a red-yellow. And when I'm being more red versus more yellow and figuring out why I do what I do, like Amy talks about. Also figuring out that when I'm being blue, it's because I'm in a really unhealthy space where my red and yellow can't flourish. I've been able to start recognizing those weaknesses that Hasatan can encourage me with to step off the path so that I can focus on Torah and stay on the path. I can actually start growing now into the person that Yah intended me to be. I can love myself and accept my strengths and strengthen my weaknesses and find the balance in my life.
Ah, very well said. Okay, now let me reimagine that for everybody else to understand what that's all about. Okay, so basically the personality tests, there's lots of them out there, right? You know, Myers-Briggs is one of the most well-known one. We've done the color code, which is something we've used here a lot. The intention was that you would understand yourself better. And then if you could understand yourself better, you could understand other people better. And so what Megan was simply saying is that in doing several of these things, she's come to understand herself. And when you understand yourself, you'll understand two things. You'll understand where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. Those are definitely some of the things you will learn, you know, in doing the personality, anything that's about understanding yourself. Okay, and so if you can understand where the weaknesses are, that also could be the playground for Hasatan, you know, if you know what your weaknesses are, all right? Now, each of the personality type of tests does focus on only, well, they focus specifically on certain areas of our being, okay? So the color code focuses on what drives what you do, okay? What's your driver, okay? Whether it's fun or peace or accomplishment or relationship, right? What's the driver? The Myers-Briggs is more about information and how you do, what you do with it, okay? Which is still part of, which is why I like if you layer your color over your letters, okay? If none of you know what I'm talking about, you'll just go look it up and study it or whatever it is. Okay, perhaps, since I've been now studying that a little bit more, because I think that a lot of you thinking it's kind of useful, I might be doing an up to the challenge with the Myers-Briggs at one of the feasts, okay? And then I will explain to you the different letter combinations and the different things that they have to do with, and how you can combine that with your color makeup, right? Like she said, she was red, yellow, and then how that then, you know, mixes in with, you know, her letter combinations, okay? ENTJ, right? Well, the same as me, except that I'm an ENTP, so right, that's the flip. All right, so, and if you don't know what the letters are, again, just look up Myers-Briggs and the test, and it's also, you can look it up as m.t.o.i, okay, right, Myers-Briggs, okay? So you can look at the test for that. All right, lots of different people out there running them. Some of them are scammy. Just be aware of that. I will have one like we did for last time that's, you know, written out that you can just go ahead and fill out, figure it out, and know what your sort of letter makeup is or whatever. Does that sound like something you guys might want? All right, now bear in mind, if we go in that direction, it's a more complex, you know, system, of understanding your personality compared to 4 colors, okay? And the 4 colors are much more simple, okay? You know, this has 4 different letters that, when combined in different ways, really come up with all kinds of different things, okay? So it's much more complex, but as opposed to what drives what you do, it focuses more on what you do with information and how you gather information and what you do with it and how you do with it, okay? So it's more about information, how you make decisions, how you evaluate information, how you gather it, and all those kind of things, okay? Whether you're thinking about it or feeling about it, that kind of stuff. It's more complex. So we'll get into that, perhaps at Sukkot, because it'll give me some time to formulate and get up to speed on it, all right? Other people have already gotten into it. I'm catching up pretty quickly here, but I'm still behind in that. So we'll get there, okay? But I think that's also something that I want to encourage all of you. Whatever you go out there's lots of other systems that I like out there that address other aspects of our personality. If they help you understand yourself, that's a powerfully useful thing. And then if you can understand your struggles and why you're good at certain things and why you struggle at other things through one of these systems, then it may help you have a little bit more of an understanding of why the people you deal with are good at certain things and come easily and other things they struggle with. And may give you a little bit more of an appreciation for what they're good at and more patience for what they struggle with. Especially when you realize they're not struggling with things that you do. Because and you'll understand that there's a different makeup to all of that. Because we tend to be very, very selfishly focused through our own filter of, well, that's easy for me, so I don't know why it's not easy for you. Or I struggle with this, so I have no idea why you don't struggle with this. Well, because they're not you. Their whole makeup is different in a lot of different ways, okay? All right? And so, but if you're married to someone or friends with someone and you understand their personality a lot more clearly, you can understand why some of the things they do is what they do. It's not because they're consciously deciding to do these things, it's because that's part of who they are and their default way of doing things, okay? And so that gives you, hopefully, more patience, all right? I mean, that was the intention when I did it originally with the colors, was understanding yourself so that you can understand others better as well, all right? So we're clear on that. All right, yes, Mr. Payne.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom.
Just something to share. I was listening to a song by the Eagles the other day, and I've heard it, I'm sure, dozens of times before. At this time, one particular lyric really hit me. And it was, as it all too often happens, we live our life in chains, and we don't even know we have the key. Well, now we know what the key is. It's the Torah and the good news.
Amen. Thank you for that. And Frank, I've been meaning to say how much I appreciate that, and it's nothing you did on purpose, but when I get to see like 3 generations together, because you're here and your son is here and your grandchildren are here, and it's good to see, because it's very rare that we see family members with other family members that show up. I mean, most of us do not have family members here. You have your mother here, which is great, right? We have a couple of people where it's, a parent and a child or whatever, even if it's adults. But to see a couple of generations, that's really beautiful to see. So we really appreciate that, okay? All right, Michael.
So the next question I had was, I don't know, it's not really a question. In verse 17, when you mentioned the helmet of deliverance, and we were talking about, I kind of interpret that as being, using your logic, using your reason to protect you from the inclinations of the flesh, inclinations of the world. But it also kind of hit me when we were talking about that I remembered watching a few days ago some short form content. This lady was having a conversation with her AI little thing, whatever it was.
Right.
And I guess basically the thing is she was not feeling well. She was tired of feeling sick all the time. And she turns on the camera and asks the AI to repeat its answer. And it said something like, listen, you feel sick all the time because you haven't changed the program. So you have to write a new script upload it to the matrix, and you have to wait for it to update. And when I was thinking about that, it was like, oh, that's affirmations. This AI thing is talking about affirmations. And so that, I don't know if it's going to help anybody else, but for me, that might help me, in conjunction with this anyway, to be able to actually buckle down and create some affirmations which should hopefully result in me changing my mindset to drive myself towards becoming what I actually want to be instead of what I kind of am now, which is somewhere in the middle of where I was and where I want to be.
All right, so I'm going to disagree with one little piece of that, okay? It's more than affirmations. You can say all the affirmations you want. If you don't believe a word of it, it's not going to do nothing, okay? I mean, you could write anything you want down and repeat it all day long. It's not going to get you anywhere. You have to feel the feeling of being that new person. You have to believe that you can be that new person. I mean, there's a lot more to reprogramming your mind. And when you said that you felt like the helmet was to protect things like your logic, you can still think wrong, okay? So you can be completely logical and be still wrong because the logic is based on flawed information or flawed something in your formula. And so the logic worked in your head, but it doesn't actually work correctly because there's something wrong in the equation, okay? So, but if you want to be, look, if you want your life to change healthy-wise, wealthy-wise, spiritually, any area of your life, relationships, okay? You have what you have because of who you are. You have to change and become somebody more in that area than you are now, or change things that are about how you are. So you have to then decide what that looks like, and then you can use affirmations to affirm that decision, okay? Because you first have to decide who in relationships, who in finance, who spiritually, who in health you are going to be, okay? So let's take health. You can say things in affirmations. If I really decided I'm going to be healthy, that's who I am, I'm a healthy person, I could say, I make healthy choices. I make healthy choices in my activity. I make healthy choices in what I eat. I make healthy, right? These are affirmations, but if you haven't made a choice to be that person and committed to it, the affirmations don't mean anything, okay? It's just words that you're gonna say that you don't believe anyway, all right? You have to want it, you have to choose it, want it, and believe it can be. Choose it, want it, believe it can be. I like to give you these things that are like simple phrases, right? Choose what you wanna be, all right? Want it, and then believe it. You gotta believe. Because you could choose it and want it and not believe it's not gonna happen, all right? You could choose it and believe it's possible, but if you really don't want it, it's not gonna happen, okay? So you have to choose it first, because if you don't choose it, then nothing's gonna happen. You can just make all the affirmations in the world if you really didn't choose that's really what you want. Maybe somebody else told you should be that, but you don't really want it. So you can make all the affirmations in the world. You have to want it. You got to choose it, want it, and then you have to believe the unseen is possible because you're not there yet, all right? So there's a lot to how affirmations actually work in terms of reprogramming. All right, anything else?
So at the beginning of that, you said something about feeling it as well.
Well, the thing is, to make an affirmation really work faster, you have to be able to put yourself in a place like, if it were true, how would I feel right now about that thing? And the more you add emotion to it, emotion strengthens and speeds up the process. Now, of course, counterproductive emotion slows it down and gets in the way, okay? So for example, you're unhealthy, and so imagine what you would feel like if you were healthy. What would that be like? Get emotionally in that space when you use the affirmation, I'm a healthy person. I make healthy choices. Well, if it was true, how would you feel? And then get yourself to feel that even if it's not true yet. And the more you can practice in feeling it, the more it will speed up the process. Because then your internal mechanisms will start working towards making that true. It's not some magical thing. You will actually start making better decisions and doing things that walk you in that direction. You'll move in the direction of what it is that you have chosen, that you want, and you have believe can be possible, okay? And you got to get some emotion behind it. That's the wanting. All right? You can choose it, but if you don't have any emotion, it's not happening. You have to want it. Everybody that has anything in life that you don't have, that you would like, they have it because they wanted it and you didn't, or they wanted it more than you, okay? You got to want it. The kingdom, you got to want it. To do all the things you need to do to overcome and everything else, that's going to be really tough to do unless you want it. You got to want it bad enough. You know, I'm okay with forever, and it'd be nice if I could live forever and everything. No, you got to want it. And you got to believe you could become that person. Well, I know I'm supposed to become Yeshua-like, but do you want to become Yeshua-like? Do you believe you can become Yeshua-like? I mean, you've chosen maybe by default, I guess, because you said you wanted to be in this walk. But I mean, have you really thought about becoming Yeshua-like? Have you made that choice? I am going to become Yeshua-like. Have you decided that you want that? You get some emotion behind it? You know. Then can you believe it, okay? All three of those things have to be congruently running in the same direction. Did that help anybody? Okay? Choose it, want it, believe, okay? All right.
I just wanted to thank you and give you a praise, Rabbi, because you and this ministry have helped me and my family to become more than we could have ever become not here. Thank you.
Amen. All right, we have our next t-shirt. Choose it, want it, believe. Okay, there you go.
I like it.
All right, Chris.
Hi, Rabbi. So I usually like to look at the Greek while you're teaching whatever there is, and I only get 1 or 2 verses in because it just takes me a while to try to figure out what it's talking about.
That can be real challenging if I'm in the Old Testament, though. I'm just kidding. I know I was in Ephesians. I'm just joking with you. All right, go ahead.
So in the first verse, it's talking about obeying your parents in the master, and that in the master, sometimes the Greek has in the master and sometimes has in master. And that time it has in master. And because I'm translating that word in the Old Testament usually as Yahweh, because Kyrios. So it could be master, it could be also Yahweh because they removed the actual well, they changed it, you know.
Right.
So I usually would, if it doesn't have the, then it seems to be more like it could be talking about Yahweh instead of the master.
Yep.
But I don't know exactly. But as far as in the master, would that be kind of like a qualifying phrase where you're like, because the word for obeying is very strong in the Greek. And so would that be, if he's talking to probably not really children like 5-year-olds because they wouldn't be listening to, they wouldn't be able to understand as well, but maybe more like teenagers
Right.
who are listening to this letter being said, that would be more like, listen to your parents in the context of Yahweh while they are saying something that is not in any way that would be trespassing Yahweh's laws.
Well, yeah, I think you said it right when you said, okay, so you have a obey, and then you have a form or qualifier as to what that, in other words, how do you want this, how is this being done? What's the form it takes? So it says, oh, children, obey your parents in this form. Okay, so your qualifier is obey your parents, but specifically in this form called the master, how the master would want it done, what would be pleasing in his sight, etc. Okay, so it gives you form. So yes, when you earlier said that you looked at it as a qualifier, that's exactly correct.
Okay. I also had a comment about when you're talking about the gut, and I've been listening to a lot of podcasts lately on mental health and of course everything around that. And I'm not an expert, but I've been learning how the gut, is connected to the brain with the vagus nerve, and this is connected to how I think the arm of Elohim is working, where one person was saying how for every one message that the brain gives to the gut is giving 9 messages back. And they were making the case that the gut is almost like a first brain because of how much it has influence over what they would call the second brain, being this one. And also how I would think that the gut is kind of like the inner kind of part of you. But the way they were talking about it, how like if food is coming in, if it's outside your body, it comes into your body, and all the way in through where it goes in the stomach and the intestines, it's kind of still outside your body because it's not actually being absorbed yet. And so it's in the one way very much inside you, but also it's an interface to the outside, the bacteria that are not really you.
Right.
And that's like where this battle's happening, whether it's the spiritual battle. Your gut lining is only 1 cell thick. And most of your immune system and your neurotransmitters, all your hormones like that, are around this area, because like the immune system is like an army right here, making sure that whatever is coming in is processed right. And so spiritually, this would be like whatever's coming in, the first place it goes before it gets to your liver or gets to your brain is going to your gut. It's the first place it goes.
Right.
And that's where it's dealt with. And but I was just thinking about that as like, how are we, when we're thinking about our gut, is that something we're thinking about first when talking about spiritual things? Like, where am I really headed in a halakhic or, Yahweh sense? We're thinking about how that kind of those like innate gut feelings are being a driver toward our thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, look, there's all kinds of complexities, right, to how our thinking and emotions interact and where these feelings, kind of come into play and et cetera. There's something known as intuitive, right? And I think that when we get a gut feeling, it's sort of an intuitive thing. But intuition is not something you could point to any specific organ on how that comes about. Getting a sense about something. Okay, that's kind of a thought, but it's a feeling, but it's an impression. And so that, I think, happens a lot more in what we call the gut, because we don't really have a place to put it. Logic we think of as being more the mind. Emotion we think of being more the heart. But what do we do with some combination of those two things that we get this sort of sense or intuition about something? Okay, we call that a gut feel about something. Okay? And so it's a lot more complex than people think. I think it's really interesting too, we have lots of aliens living in our gut that are part of the influence on our brain up here. They're the ones that scream for all the sugar that you give it. They're the ones that make you crave things and tell you you're hungry when you really are not hungry, but they're screaming for the junk that they want. And so you're possessed by those alien bacteria that just are feeding like crazy on the junk. And so that's why you crave all these things, because they crave, not you. Okay, and then once you figure out how to get them to be, not fed that well, and they end up leaving, et cetera, then you find that you don't crave these things quite as much anymore, because it wasn't you that was craving it. All right, you've got all of this other environment that's going on, this biome that you have in your gut that just screams for more of whatever it's craving. And so you got to learn to let this rule over that. Okay, excuse me.
And one thing was about how if you're girding your loins, then that would be tightening your belt, tightening your barrier, your intestinal barriers to be strong and process what's supposed to be processed. Otherwise, you'll get the toxins, like sugars, other things that would be messing with your ability to process the nutrients correctly and filter out waste.
Sure. All right, let me throw this out there before we go. I guess we go to live stream now after this. So let me just throw this out there, okay? I study a lot of stuff. I know a lot of you study a lot of stuff. You need to understand that probably for most of you who've not really studied this, that your number one problem that you're neglecting in your health and even in your mind stuff is your gut. You're not understanding how much what you eat and what you're putting in there is affecting all the other things, okay? Health starts there, all right, in your gut. And so what you're putting in, and as Americans, man, we put stuff in that nobody should be putting in their body, okay? Other countries won't let that stuff be in their products. We put all this stuff, and because it doesn't kill us and doesn't necessarily give us pain when we eat it, we think it's fine. I seem okay eating all this junk, but now they're finding a linkage between the gut and the brain. There's a brain-gut, kind of interface that they're now literally scientifically able to match up, okay? Which they hypothesized about for years, but now they actually think they've shown that there is a linkage between the two. But your health starts in your gut, okay? Your ability to bring in and absorb the nutrients that you need. And some of us have destroyed enough of that so that we don't absorb certain things well, so you might need to take them in a different form or a different way, And so you have to learn about that. Because just because you're eating stuff that says got all this wonderful nutrition in it necessarily doesn't mean your body is absorbing it, which is why you should get every now and then some blood work to see if you are actually, at the right levels in all of these things, because you may have a problem absorbing things, And that could really be a challenge if it's not in the form your body can take at this point. All right, live stream.
All right, from Easy D. Herrera. So being a fully armored warrior all the time helps protect us in our walk when opening our mouths to be bold, confident, speaking about the good news that we've learned with confidence?
Yes, that would happen. I'm not really sure who you're speaking confidently about the good news with. That's not your job, okay? I know people don't like when I say that, but scripturally, that's the role of the teacher, prophet, anointed, whatever's. Now, if somebody's asking you why you're doing, you should be prepared to give an answer why you do what you do, and you might mention that. But, we're not, I don't know why we're walking and opening our mouths to boldly, commonly speak about the good news. Who are you doing that with? Okay? All right, I don't do that. And I'm your teacher. I do it here from the microphone. I don't share this stuff when I meet somebody on the street, standing in line at the store, any of that other stuff, sitting next to somebody on an airplane or whatever. I'm not, you might think, oh, why? Isn't it not my job to bother people? It says the Father will draw them. But he put you next to them in the plane. That was random. If it was more than random, they'll ask me questions, right? They'll show that they're being drawn. So I just want to make sure that we all understand that you are not Christian. You are not in that mindset required to go out there and boldly speak about the good news to anybody. You are to be prepared to give an answer for your beliefs if somebody asks, because giving an answer means someone asked, okay? It doesn't mean to go and create the question and start sharing with people that didn't ask. So you're only doing that often because Christianity has convinced you that there's a battle between God and Satan and God's losing, and so you got to get in there and help. I'm serious. The first time I ever watched a televangelist, I don't know how old I was, but it came up on my screen on TV somewhere. I swear I thought there was a contest going on between God and Satan, and God was losing the way they were screaming. We need to get out there and we need to do this. It really sounded like a halftime pep talk, and the game was, Satan 47, God 12. I mean, that's what it sounded like. Okay, and we're losing, which sounded ridiculous to me. How could God be losing? Okay? And so it's not your job. You listen to the Father and Son teaching again, where the Father has to draw, and then the Son can reveal. But the Father has to draw, not you. It's not your job, not my job. Okay, I put teachings out on YouTube. People get drawn to them. I don't go and make sure that they pop up on their feeds and insert it in their lives somehow. Okay? All right, so next.
All right, from Monique Edwards. Rabbi, great teaching. Never been in a physical battle / combat, but it seems to me that if I were, I would never take my armor off. Would never be safe to thoughts on my thoughts.
No, I agree with that 100%, okay? Now, I mean, obviously, if you're wearing a physical armor, that could get real uncomfortable to have it on 24/7, but this is not physical armor. You should have this spiritual armor on whenever you're awake, okay? As a matter of fact, you should have your mind kind of, set properly before you go to bed so that you kind of have your armor on when you go to sleep. Get your head wrapped in the right direction before you go to sleep. But when you wake up in the morning, you should, in a way, consciously say, okay, I got to put my armor on. Do I got my truth ready? Do I have my belief ready? Do I have, the sword of the Spirit? Am I ready with that? The word, handy, at my fingertips, so to speak. I mean, all the aspects of it. Do I have righteousness? Am I going to do stuff to make sure my breastplate is nice and firm and strong? Because I strengthen it every time I do what Yahweh said. All right, next.
All right, from Rachel E., and this one's a two-parter. In verse 18, what does it mean to watch in all perseverance and supplication? And also in regards to verse 16, Abba calls us to belief because he believes we can do it. Does this shield of belief mean we can take hold of his belief in us, making it our own?
that would be an aspect, the second part as far as the shield of belief. I mean, you've got aspects of the shield of belief that you've accumulated over time because of what you've experienced, okay? And yes, you would add to that Abba called you to believe because he believes that you can do it, so that's going to strengthen that shield, okay? So that is a part of that. As far as watching in all perseverance, okay, so let's take the first half of that. So you have to persevere to do something means that it's not going to be easy to do, okay? So when it says, praying at all times with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, watching in all perseverance. So as you're watching, what are you watching? You. And everything else is going on around you. But part of this is watching you. And you have to persevere to do that when it's hard to do. It's easy to get distracted. So it takes some perseverance to focus and stay focused, all right? Now as far as, and supplication for all the set-apart ones. So supplication, all right? Okay, so he's saying that you're doing this also in the context of that you're a part of a group, okay? So it's a group activity that you're also doing alone. So all the things that Abba's asked you to do is individual in the context of a group. But it's individual, but it has a context of being a group activity, all right? All right, next.
From Sandy Williams, is there any danger, not loving my neighbor, that my armor has become more like a wall in terms of having no tolerance toward the lovey-dovey Christian way I once was in?
I'm not sure. Let me see if I can understand. Okay, as far as is there any danger? Look, there's always danger when you're out of balance, okay? Things can go wrong and get sideways, et cetera, in any aspect of your life when you lose balance, okay? So, look, there were some really good, warm things that you learned to do as a Christian, okay? As a matter of fact, I know some people that left the Messianic to go back to Christianity because they wanted to find love again, because the Messianics were just not loving the way they had gotten in Christianity. Well, that's sad, okay? However, you know, all that lovey-dovey stuff and no Torah observance is out of balance. But all the we've got the truth and we're right, you're wrong, there's no balance there either, okay? So yes, there's a danger that you have an out of balance problem is the way I would word it, okay?
From Monique Edwards, does 2 Peter 3:12 match a little of what you were teaching in regards to us becoming who we are meant to be? When we do that, could it hasten Yeshua's coming?
Looking for and hastening the coming of the day of Elohim through which the heavens shall be destroyed, being said, so verse 11 is where it says, so what kind of people ought you to be in set-apart behavior and reverence, looking for and hastening the coming, okay? So, question, let me just read out your match a little of what you were teaching in regards to us becoming who we were meant to be. When we do that, could it hasten? Okay. Look, the hastening of Yeshua's coming is not, I got to put this back in the same words I used earlier. It's an individual thing in the context of the group. One individual doing what they're supposed to do isn't going to bring them any quicker, okay? The group, in other words, many, doing what they're supposed to do will bring him quicker because he's looking for whatever he's looking for numbers-wise before he shows up, okay? So if you take it upon yourself to be one and then others do also, then we do potentially hasten that, I guess, because I believe he's looking for a certain level and number of people that are making these commitments and walking it out, have made the transformation, you know, to a greater degree, you know, than maybe we have at this point, okay? But I don't know that you can say individually that I can do something that hastens. If I do, I'm certainly not hindering. How's that? Let's take it from the reverse. If you don't, you're hindering it. If you do, potentially you're helping to hasten if more people do, okay? If more people do. Now, it also could be that individually you are hastening it simply because he may be looking for a number throughout time and not just at one moment, and so you're adding to that number, and that could also be hastening it. I don't know what he's looking for. He doesn't say anywhere in Scripture what will actually be the triggering conclusion of what needed to happen before he comes. We know things that will happen in the world before he comes, but he's going to keep intervening and keeping us going longer Because it does say that things can get so bad that the whole world would get destroyed and there would be no life, no flesh left alive. But he can also intervene so that doesn't happen as long as he wants until he has whatever it is he's looking for, okay? So while he has given us some information on what it's going to look like as the world declines to the point where he returns, but he's not telling us what that on the other side of it looks like so that he keeps intervening and tarrying, letting us keep going a little longer because we haven't finished whatever he wanted us to finish. All right, so does it make sense? Okay? So unfortunately, we have a lot more information about the one aspect of it than the other. Okay? Matthew 24 and Daniel and Revelation, they all tell us a lot about the signs of when he's coming, but they don't tell us what's the cause that allows it finally to play out. Because he can delay that as long as he wants. Okay? Look at some of the things that have happened in the last 2,000 years. It certainly could have led to what was described in those different quote-unquote prophetic chapters. But yet something came about to make things a little better or a lot better temporarily so that things kept going along for a little while longer. Then another tragedy would happen that could have possibly led to one of those, but didn't because we're not finished with whatever he's looking for, okay? That's my only way of understanding it. My best guess is that we, meaning all human beings since the beginning of time, ultimately at some point, we have not accomplished whatever he's waiting for, okay? So don't tell me you've done the math and we've got the 6,000 years and then blah, blah, blah. That math, you can throw it out, okay? Because in 2025, we have passed everybody's math that I've ever heard. And I've heard math since I started, understanding this in 1986, okay? All right? So I've heard everybody come up with numbers, and everybody's numbers we've passed. They came out with 2018, 2020, 2021, 2023. Wow. I mean, these are numbers that I heard 40 years ago. And we passed, all of them. Why? Because the wisdom of man is foolishness to Yah. All right? And you're focusing on the wrong thing. He's not obligated to do anything. Okay? No, he has obligated, well, I shouldn't say that. He's obligated himself to do certain things, but he hasn't obligated him as to the timing of it. You've chosen the timing of it. You've done your math from what Daniel said. Well, I'm doing the 1,235 days or the 1,350 days or the whatever. You know what? Do whatever you want. Come up, because you'll use the math to come up with why we're not there yet and we still have time, but it's going to happen next year or the year after, whatever you're going to do the math for. Okay? Because you think you have to figure it out. No, you got to figure out the part that Monique's asking about, which is your individual walk. That part can have a positive impact on reaching critical mass or whatever he's looking for him to show up, okay? It's not about the world declining. Everybody's like watching world events. Well, look, world events are playing out, so we're the last generation. Really? Every generation's had that. And every generation's had him ultimately intervene in some way so that it didn't end up being that. So you're looking at it wrong. Stop looking at world events to figure out when he's coming. Look at the body to figure out when he's coming. Is the body ready? Because he's coming for a bride. He's coming for all the things after he saves us from almost destroying ourselves. And he's got to have something to work with. And do you want to be something he can work with? That's what we demonstrate in this fleshly walk. This bodysuit we have is to show him that he can work with us. He's got something to work with. Does that make any sense? Now, yes, we will see world event signs, but we've seen lots that looked like it was going that bad, didn't quite fully get there many times. The apostles thought it was their time, and they had a pretty bad time, okay? Matter of fact, their times are much worse than what we got. As a matter of fact, almost every generation has had it worse than we had. Okay, just go back and look at what they had to deal with compared to what we're dealing with. Oh, but what's so rough right now? Compared to what? Okay? What are you comparing it to? Things are great right now. But inflation and this and that, where's that verse? Well, it's going to be like $8 for eggs. That wasn't in Matthew 24. Okay? But you still can get them. I don't know what you're looking at. Look at you knowing that you are trying to be your little piece of this puzzle. Just work on you. And somewhere in the puzzle that fits. Does that make this go quicker? Maybe. I don't know what he's looking for. I mean, like ultimately, he's looking for all of us to transform into him. But I mean, I don't know what he's looking for to trigger, I've got what I need to have this next thing happen, okay? There's no verses that tell us that. It just tells us to look at the signs of what's happening and know that that means he's coming soon. It's the birth pangs, it's the beginning of things, etc. All right, well, that's been going on now 2,000 plus years. It's a long time, okay? 2,000 years. So where is he? He's waiting on some stuff. So you can help by doing your thing. Okay, I don't know how that helps, in what way it helps. I just know that it helps because you're doing your part. Your part is to do your transforming, do your walk. Okay? All right, next.
All right, from m.t.o.i Odessa, Rabbi, can you expand on what this means to us today in 6 verse 5? Obey your masters according to the flesh, since we don't live in the time the word was written. How does this apply to us today?
Okay, go back and listen to the teaching. I answered that. I'm sorry, I don't like to come off fleshly and frustrated, but I mean, like I literally explained that in the teaching at the beginning of the teaching. So whoever's asking didn't pay attention or missed the beginning of the teaching, okay? I literally explained that. All right, next question. Now, if you go back and listen and still have a problem, contact us and I'll answer. But I literally explained that, okay? All right, next.
All right, and this is the last one, Rabbi. From Greg Wallen in Ephesians 6:19, making known the secret of the good news. What does he mean here? Is this from a fivefold guy role only?
He says, also for me, so now he's talking about himself, that a word might be given to me in the opening of my mouth to be bold in making known the secret of the good news, which is what he's been doing and saying how he's been being persecuted for, this sharing of the good news. So the good news for the Gentiles is they get to be a part of it. I'm making this really, really simple, right? The good news for the Jews is you can repent and be restored back. The old broken off branches can be restored back into the olive tree. Okay, now we're back to Romans 11, all right? And so I'm just making things really simple. So he's going out with these good newses. He's also saying what you do matters, and that there's a path that you can go on, and that you need to have the Torah of the truth, and that you need to have a belief, that you need to understand Messiah's role. This is all part of the good news. And he says, I'm being attacked for it. Pray, this is about praying, right? Praying at all times, etc. And for me also pray, because that the word might be given to me so I can boldly continue to share the secret of the good news. In other words, he's revealing something that was being talked about of old without a whole lot of understanding of what it would look like. But they were promised that certain things would happen, but it wasn't clear what it would look like when it actually was happening. And Paul's like, a bunch of this is happening right now. And I need to be bold in telling people, as part of my role as, yes, an anointed, appointed, fivefold guy, to share that information, okay? So yes. For Greg's answer, hopefully that answered the question, okay? That's what I think he means there, and yes, it's because of his role. But you see him talking about this in all the other letters that we've read so far, this idea of boldly sharing this thing that, he calls it a secret, meaning it was something that wasn't quite understood very clearly up until he's now revealing it. It was understood that things were going to happen. It was understood that some of that was forward-looking, to like Abraham, it was forward-looking to something that wasn't going to happen in Abraham's time. And we're told that Abraham had the good news shared with him. Hey, you're going to be the father of many nations. Oh, what was that going to look like? But now we see it starting to happen here with Paul, right? I mean, he's literally spreading a word that's going to bring in many nations. Hadn't happened really until this point. It's only about one nation. And so it's really talking about him as a fivefold guy. All right, what else? That was it?
That's it, Rabbi.
All right. This is, for lack of a better way to put it, your whole existence is an opportunity, okay? The Father is giving you an opportunity. And that opportunity, if you don't choose it, is not the end all be all necessarily, in that if you don't choose it, you get this life. I mean, so you still have that, and when it's over, whatever. But he's giving you an opportunity for more, okay? He gave you this, And you can have this. He said, but I gave you, Yeshua said, I came so you could have life, which you already have, but more abundantly, which you don't have. Okay? So more abundantly doesn't just mean that you have a better quality of life now. It means that there's going to be more life. Okay? If I have food and then I have abundance, I have more food. So if you're going to have more abundant life, that means you're going to have more life. Abundance means more of it. Okay? And so you have an opportunity that he's offered you freely. And then the question is, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with that opportunity? You're going to squander it, take advantage of it, take it seriously? Okay? And that's what Paul's here sharing, saying, look, I want you to understand the opportunity you have. I want you to understand what was offered to you and made possible by these factors that he lays out, including what Messiah did, especially what Messiah did, and how that provides you with this opportunity, okay? But that's up to you to understand and then choose to embrace or not embrace and what you do with it, okay? I mean, you know, it's like I said, I could give any one of you $1 million, and you know what? Some of you, it will ruin your life. Some of you, it'll make everything better in your life. There's no knowing what you're going to do with it, okay? And so Abba makes this opportunity available, and he's sitting back and watching what you're doing with it. What are you doing with it, okay? He said, I woke you up to know that there is a game afoot. There's a game. You're players in a game. And in this game, you can just enjoy the life to whatever degree you can enjoy it. And some people can enjoy it pretty good, even if they just choose that this is all there is. They can still enjoy it pretty good. Or you could really, want to go to the bonus rounds of forever. Okay? And understand what needs to be done in this life to get to that bonus round, so to speak. Okay? You got to level up. All right? Because this level only has, 120 years, what he says, right? You're given 120 years. Not everybody even makes it that far, but you're given 120 years, and then that's it. If you level up, you got the opportunity to have forever. It's a whole lot more than 120 years. It's not like the next level up is 150 years or 200 years. It's forever. That's pretty powerful, okay? We're going to end here. I hope that was good for everyone.